The cockpit of the F-35 Lightning II was bathed in the terrified red glow of emergency lighting. Inside the helmet of the pilot, known only by the call sign Viper 1, the sound of heavy breathing was punctuated by the rhythmic, piercing beat of the master caution alarm. This wasn't a simulation, and it wasn't a drill. At 30,000 feet, in the pitch-black skies above a rural expanse, a $100 million national asset was turning into a falling brick. The fuel gauges were screaming empty, the engine was starving, and the nearest airbase was 80 miles away, a distance a jet physically could not cover. On the night of December 5th, 2025, Viper 1 was faced with a decision that pilots dread. Eject into the darkness and let the aircraft disintegrate, or attempt a maneuver so dangerous it is rarely practiced even in the safety of a simulator. To truly understand the gravity of this moment, you have to understand the machine involved. The F-35 is often called a flying supercomputer. It is the pinnacle of stealth technology, designed to see everything while remaining unseen. Its sensors can track targets miles away. Its helmet allows the pilot to look to the floor of the jet, and its electronic warfare suite can jam enemy radar before they even know it's there. It is a machine built on logic, algorithms, and precision. But on this stormy December night, all the algorithms in the world couldn't solve the problem of physics. The jet was thirsty and the tanks were dry. A rare mechanical failure in the fuel transfer system, compounded by an unforecasted severe storm front, had created the perfect storm. The fuel that was on board was trapped in external tanks the engine couldn't access, and the bingo fuel level, the point of no return, had vanished minutes ago. The mission had started as a routine transit flight, moving the aircraft from an interior base to a coastal station. But as the weather closed in, blinding the pilot with rain and clouds, the situation spiraled. The flight computer calculated the glide ratio and the remaining fuel, and the result was a grim mathematical certainty. The aircraft would flame out long before it reached a runway. Standard procedure in this scenario is cold and calculating. The manual says to point the aircraft toward an unpopulated area, trigger the ejection sequence, and parachute to safety. It is a decision that saved the pilot, but sacrifices a machine. However, below Viper 1 lay a scattering of farmhouses and small towns. Ejecting meant turning a 30,000-pound stealth fighter into an uncontrolled missile. The pilot wasn't just worried about saving the Air Force's money. He was worried about the families sleeping in the dark below. Then, a miracle occurred, or perhaps a curse, depending on how you look at it. A break in the thick cloud deck revealed a faint amber line cutting through the desolate landscape. It wasn't a runway. It was a highway. It was unlit, unmarked, and narrow, flanked by power lines and drainage ditches. To a civilian, it was just a road. To a desperate pilot running on fumes, it was the only option left. Viper 1 made a split-second decision that would have terrified a lesser aviator. He keyed the radio, his voice chillingly calm despite the chaos in the cockpit. Viper 1, committing to landing. Highway visual. Air traffic control barely had time to register the transmission. There was no time to clear the road, no time to shut down traffic. This was happening now. The challenges of landing a fighter jet on a highway are immense. A standard military runway is a massive expanse of reinforced concrete, usually 150 to 200 feet wide, flat, and free of debris. A highway is completely different. It is perhaps 40 feet wide, barely wider than the wingspan of the jet itself. Worse, roads are crowned, curved slightly in the center to allow rain to drain off. For a car, this is helpful. For a fighter jet landing at 150 miles per hour, that curve acts like a ramp, constantly trying to slide the aircraft off the pavement and into the dirt. And then there are the obstacles. Road signs, guardrails, and streetlights, any of which would shear off a wing or shatter the landing gear upon impact. Viper 1 wasn't just trying to land. He was trying to thread a needle in the dark while riding a rocket, with less than 2 minutes of fuel remaining. The pilot pushed the nose down, diving through the murky weather. The F-35A, unlike its Marine Corps cousin, cannot hover. It has to land like a traditional airplane, fast and long. Viper 1 had to manage his energy state perfectly. If he came in too fast, he would overrun the straight section of the road and crash into the curve ahead. If he came in too slow, the jet would stall and drop out of the sky, like a stone before ever reaching the pavement. The head-up display, HUD, flickered with green symbology, the flight path marker dancing left and right as the crosswinds battered the jet. The streetlights below flashed by like strobe lights, creating a disorienting tunnel effect. As the ground rushed up, the pilot cut the throttle to idle. The roar of the engine spooled down to a high-pitched whine. The silence of the glide was heavier than the noise had been. He flared the aircraft, pulling the nose up to cushion the impact, his eyes locked on the center line of the road. The rear wheels slammed into the asphalt with a violence that shook the entire airframe. Smoke kicked up from the tires as they fought for grip on the slick, rain-soaked road surface. The jet immediately tried to veer right, the crown of the road pushing it toward the guardrail. Viper 1 danced on the rudder pedals, a masterclass in ground handling, correcting the slide with millisecond precision. The anti-skid braking system pulsed violently, the aircraft shuddering as it shed speed. Imagine being a driver on that lonely stretch of highway that night. You check your rear-view mirror and see the terrifying silhouette of a stealth fighter overshadowing your sedan, its wingtips clearing the power poles by mere inches, sparks flying from its wheels. It was a scene straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, but the stakes were lethally real. With mere feet to spare before the road curved sharply into a wooded area, the beast finally came to a halt. The pilot sat there for a moment, the only sound the cooling ticking of the metal and the distant wail of approaching sirens. He looked at his fuel gauge. It read exactly 0. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the highway had become a spectacle. State troopers had blocked off miles of the road, keeping the growing crowd of onlookers back. Flatbed trucks were arriving to figure out how to retrieve the massive machine. Images of the F-35 sitting casually between the white lines of commuter route flooded the internet, sparking a global conversation. Aviation forums lit up with debates. Was the pilot a hero? Was he reckless? How did the landing gear survive the uneven surface? Historically, the concept of highway landings isn't entirely new. During the Cold War, nations like Sweden and Finland explicitly designed their air forces to operate this way, building stretches of road that doubled as runways to disperse their fleets in case of a nuclear strike. Even today, the U.S. Air Force practices agile combat employment, training to land on austere roads. But there's a massive difference between a planned exercise, with the road swept for debris, police closing off traffic in broad daylight, and a desperate, heavy, low-fuel landing in the middle of the night on a public road filled with unknowns. What Viper 1 achieved on December 5th was a defiance of probability. He managed the kinetic energy of the aircraft, the topography of the road, and the crushing psychological weight of potential catastrophe, all within a window of roughly 120 seconds. Analysts later suggested that had he ejected, the unmanned jet could have glided for another 3 miles, potentially striking a nearby residential development. The pilot's calculation wasn't just about the plane. It was about the people on the ground. The decision to land saved the taxpayers over $80 million. But more importantly, it proved that the human element remains the most critical system in any aircraft. In an era where we rely heavily on artificial intelligence, autopilot, and sensor fusion, this event served as a stark reminder. Technology can fail. Sensors can be blinded. Engines can starve. But the trained human brain, capable of intuition, courage, and adaptation, is the ultimate failsafe. The pilot didn't just rely on the computer. He took control when the computer had no options left. As the F-35 was eventually towed away, leaving skid marks on a road that was never meant to touch the tires of a fighter jet, the story of Viper 1 was cemented in aviation history. It stands alongside the Miracle on the Hudson as a testament to skill under pressure. December 5th, 2025, will be remembered not for a crash, but for the crash that didn't happen. It is a story of audacity, of a pilot who looked at a dark, narrow highway and saw a runway, turning a potential tragedy into an aerial miracle.